Hillary Clinton is in. The former Secretary of State announced it Sunday. She is already traveling to Iowa, which holds, of course, the first contest in the presidential race. This as Florida Senator Marco Rubio set to tell supporters in Miami later today that he's running for president, becoming the third Republican senator to make it official. David Drucker is senior correspondent for the Washington Examiner and is in Florida for Rubio's announcement. He has already told donors on a conference call that he's in. No big surprise there, but I wonder, David, if in some ways his announcement isn't overshadowed by Hillary Clinton's announcement over the weekend.
You know, John, it was originally thought that it's possible Hillary could step on his announcement. But I think when you take a look at everything, the president's détente with Cuba and that historic handshake with Raul Castro in the past few days, and now Hillary, his former Secretary of State, jumping into the race, I think in a sense it might actually give Rubio a bigger stage, even though he has to share it. All of a sudden, at least for today, he is going to be the Republican voice of the opposition to the president's policies and to Clinton. And it gives a great contrast for a 43-year-old up-and-coming Republican who's asking voters to join him for a new generation of leadership versus Hillary Clinton, 67, a voice from the past.
I lived in Miami for 14 years. I know that Cuban issues are front and center to Miami politics, but I wonder about the rest of the nation. Is the rest of the nation all that obsessed with Raul Castro and Fidel Castro and what President Obama has done?
Well, not necessarily, but it's true that Republican primary voters generally are very concerned about the president's foreign policy. They tend to look askance at his change in policy with Cuba. It's not universally accepted among Republicans that that's a bad idea, but for many Republicans who just don't trust the president, whether it's on ISIS, Israel, Iran, or Cuba, dealing with another dictatorship there, I think that Rubio is pitch perfect, at least for now, when it comes to his more hawkish foreign policy. And it gives him a chance, in fact, to elevate himself compared to some of the other more seasoned executives are going to run, whether we're talking Jeb Bush or Scott Walker. Marco Rubio is only 43 years old. He's never run anything, and his fluency on foreign policy will give him an opportunity to overcome that challenge.
He is young. He is, not a particularly familiar face in Washington, having really just gotten to the Senate a few years ago. But he's taken on long odds before and come out on top.
It's the interesting thing about his career. A lot of people focus on his 2010 Senate run. He was 35 points down to Charlie Crist, then a Republican governor and very popular. Everybody was telling him to get out of the race, and Rubio stuck around and ended up chasing Crist right out of the Republican Party. But even before that, he always had odds stacked against him politically when he ran for the West Miami City Council, ran for the state legislature, and he always managed to overcome those odds. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do in this race. There's one thing he's going to have to deal with, and that is his position on immigration. He, in the past, has supported a path to legalization for illegal immigrants. Conservatives are going to be concerned about that, at least some conservatives. On the other hand, Rubio may be the most natural and gifted communicator in the field, and it is a heavyweight field.
Yeah. He has, according to what I read, he has not focused a great deal on Florida issues in the Senate. He's left that to his fellow Senator, Democrat Bill Nelson of Florida. But he has that post on the Foreign Relations Committee, and in that respect, his knowledge of foreign affairs is likely to be pretty deep.
It is deep, and it's one of the things that is going to help him compete with the governors in the race. It's also one of those things that will help him address challenges about his age and just general life experience compared to some of the other candidates. And I think it's important to note that at least at this point, there's a possibility that foreign policy and national security could be a very top issue in the Republican primary and also the general election. And if that is the case, and it would be a lot different than 2012, which was fought on domestic issues, if that's the case, it gives him a better shot at winning the primary, and it also gives him a much better shot of defeating Hillary Clinton in a general election should he be nominated.
Interesting that one of his mentors, his political mentors in Florida, is a guy who might also be getting into the race, Jeb Bush. He has helped out Marco Rubio a lot in terms of Florida politics.
And this is going to be a big story. They don't live too far apart from each other in South Florida. As you mentioned, Bush mentored Rubio. Bush was governor of Florida while Rubio was Speaker of the House of Representatives for the state of Florida in the legislature, the first Cuban American ever to serve in that post. And everywhere you go in Florida, the talk is How does Rubio do against Bush? How does Bush do against Rubio? I think for the Cuban-American community, they won't say it, but Rubio's last name and his heritage is going to give him an advantage. But if you're looking at Florida writ large, we know that Bush has sewn up a lot of the money and a lot of the Republican establishment and the political talent that comes with it. It's going to be a real interesting battle if we get into January, February of next year, and both of these gentlemen are still top contenders.
All right, last question. You've got Ted Cruz in the race. You've got Rand Paul in the race. You've got Marco Rubio in the race, all Republican senators and all elected with some degree of Tea Party support. So which one of these guys gets the Tea Party vote, or do they split it?
It'll be interesting to see. I think in the first couple of weeks since Cruz has gotten in and then Rand Paul followed last week, I give a slight edge to Ted Cruz for now, simply because he's run a very effective first couple of weeks of campaigning and positioned himself early to emerge as the candidate of the right. And then the question for Cruz is, can he grow from there? Now, Rand Paul has a lot of support among younger voters. He's a dynamic candidate. I think this has a long way to go. He could easily emerge, but because of his libertarian leanings, he's going to have to deal with a foreign policy that is not necessarily in step with the rest of the Republican Party. Look for Rubio to run as a unifying candidate that goes after all of the Republican vote and doesn't try and get pigeonholed on the right, on the establishment, or anywhere else. He sees himself as a unifying candidate. That's going to be his goal.
David Drucker in Miami, where it looks beautiful as usual. We finally have some spring weather here in New York, so I'm not going to be too envious of you down there. Thank you, David. We'll look for more.
Enjoy it, John. You're welcome. Thank you.